You ever go into your boss's office and have a question for them and leave actually being more confused than you went in? I know that's happened to me on occasion, not with my current boss, of course. And executive presence is sort of like that. When someone says, hey, you need to work on your executive presence, or you think to yourself, I wish I had more executive presence, sometimes the more you try to figure it out, or the more you ask people about how they have executive presence, you just end up being more confused. So today, stick around. We're going to talk about, in a very simple but powerful manner, what executive presence is and how you can get more of it this year. So, welcome to Executive Tune Up. My name is Joe Kwan, the Connection Counselor. And what is the secret to executive presence? It's a lot like charisma. If you ask 10 people how they define executive presence, you're probably going to get 10 different answers. And most of the answers, if not all of the answers that come back, aren't really going to help you specifically get more executive presence. Well, I'm really excited to share with you today some thoughts and principles about executive presence, which can really help you break through and develop this during the next year. Now, the reason why I call it the secret to executive presence, it's kind of funny because the secret is actually sitting there in plain sight. Now, what are the two words that make up executive presence? Executive and presence. And part of the problem is when you ask most people about executive presence, they focus on the first word, executive, how to be executive-like. And the problem with that approach is it ends up being sort of a copying or imitating approach where you see someone who's good at doing something, and whether it really matters to you or not, or whether it's applicable to your situation or your organization, if you just copy that, it doesn't necessarily get you the right results because what they're doing has worked for them in that moment and may not work for you with your style, your background, your abilities, or in the particular project or scenario that you find yourself in. Now, the reason why it's called executive presence is because people seem like an executive. And the root of executive is exequi, which means to carry out. So that's really essentially at its simplest matter why someone becomes or is, able to become an executive, because they're really good at carrying things out. They execute. And that's why they're risen to a position to manage others to help them execute and get things done for the organization that has deemed right to give them that position. Now, the secret to executive presence actually is sitting in the second word, not in executive and copying executives, but in the word presence. And we all know, I don't have to give you a definition, what presence is, right? You walk into a room and you feel the presence of the people in the room, right? Some people, you may gravitate towards them and they seem, charismatic, or they seem very wise or fun. Other people, you may shy away from them because they seem like they're in a bad mood, or they just don't seem very safe, to be around because they're very angry or, agitated, right? So you kind of steer clear of them. So we all know as human beings what presence is. We don't need to take a course to understand why presence is important and the fact that it impacts not just you, but the other people who come into contact with you. So the secret to using that presence part of executive presence is you have to generate the type of presence in that given moment that leads people to feel like you're an executive, right? Not that you look like one, not that you necessarily sound like one, right? Although those may come into it. But the key principle that's generating it is, do they feel? Is their perception or feeling of you as someone that is like an executive? And this feeds right into my definition of executive presence, which is executive presence is the ability to inspire confidence that you can lead well in a given situation. Soak that in just for a second. Executive presence is the ability, it's an ability, it can be taught to inspire confidence, right? Confidence in others, that you can lead well in a given situation, lead well like an executive. So that's the key here. And the secret is it's that feeling. It's that feeling that feeds the executive presence, and it's that feeling that should inform whatever it is that you do. Because it's not only that other people sense that about you, it's when you have the feeling of an executive and that you know the right thing to do, or you have a confidence that you can figure out the right thing to do, that will inform all your actions down the line, versus faking it, where you don't really know what to do, you feel insecure, but you just do something because you have to do something, and you think, fake it to make it is such a great idea. Now, one distinction about fake it to make it, and I know a lot of people have used this to success, including myself, I don't see it as pretending that you have the skills. It's more a bridge to pretend that you feel confident when you actually do have the skills. So the feeling isn't quite there, but you just fake it long enough to get going until the feeling catches up to the skills that you already have. It's not about pretending that you have something that you don't. It's just about giving yourself a booster shot of confidence so you can perform at your best, which was already available to you just psychologically. You would kind of put yourself a little bit back. So when you hear fake it to make it, I want you to think about it in that concept, not I'm just going to pretend that I'm really great at something I'm not great at doing. It's more just about bridging yourself to get to your best ability. So hopefully these insights in executive presence will help you going forward. So when you're in a situation, right, where something needs to get done, think to yourself, well, what is it that's really trying to get done? What is the goal that is going on here? Because that's how executives think. And then figure out what is the state of being, what is the presence that I need to have to contribute to this goal happening. And then only after that do you layer on the actions, because they're based on the right feeling of an executive. And when you have all those in combination, the awareness, the feeling, and then the action, then people will really and truly feel your executive presence. So there's a lot more about the different states of being you can have, and I talk about that in other videos. So if you're interested, check out my website, connectioncounselor.com, where I have other videos where I go into more detail. And also one thing I'm really passionate about, and I'm doing a lot more this year, is talking about executive presence for diverse or underrepresented professionals. I jokingly call it the Tom Brady problem. Nothing against Tom Brady, but if you walk into a C-suite, into a boardroom, and there's a bunch of people there, and one dude looks like Tom Brady, who's everyone gonna think is the CEO, right? So then everyone else who doesn't look like Tom Brady is going to kind of be starting at a negative in terms of the presupposition of other people. And that's a factor when people are deciding, oh, you just don't feel like the person I should promote. You just don't feel like a CEO or management material. So that's not the end of the story, but it is the beginning of the story, where if you're not Tom Brady or don't resemble Tom Brady, you have to realize what position you're starting from. And we talk about different approaches to handle that and still have outsized executive presence, even if the presupposition of people, the stereotype, so to speak, is that maybe you wouldn't have executive presence, which both you and I know is totally not true. Well, thanks for coming to Executive Tune-Up. My name is Joe Kwan, the Connection Counselor. Remember, to do your best, you have to be at your best. So tune in to Tune Up.